In this video, we're going to create this texture for the planet Mars using Maya and Photoshop. We'll begin by creating a polygon sphere. I'll apply a new texture to it by right-clicking and choosing, assign new material, Arnold, AI standard surface. I'll name it, and I'm going to reduce the specular weight to 0. I'll apply the checkerboard texture built into Maya, hitting 6 on the keyboard. I'll select the sphere, go into my UV editor. I'll right-click and choose UV shell. Now I want to scale this so that the checkerboard squares are more square rather than this flat rectangle. So I'll start to play with the y-axis. I'm scaling it only in the y direction, not on either side, because we have to have a seamless texture in Photoshop so that when it spins we don't see that seam in the 2D file. I'll return to my object mode, select my sphere, I'll go to Image, UV Snapshot, I'll save it. Next we'll open our UV map inside of Photoshop and begin the texture. I've opened up my PNG UV map inside of Photoshop and I've got the texture I'm going to use, and I'll copy and paste it into the PNG. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees counterclockwise and I'll tuck it against the right hand side. I'll hit Command J on the keyboard to duplicate it, Command T, and I'll flip it horizontal and I'll put it against the left hand side of my document. I'll begin by throwing a layer mask on that new layer. Hitting B on the keyboard, we'll give it a good size. I've made the hardness 25%. Now it's basically Photoshop skills we'll be using. I'll shift and drag through. Now I'm going to put the UV map on so I can see exactly what will be seen inside of Maya. So these larger craters and then these small ones at the top, they're kind of insignificant. So this is the area in which we're going to work. We'll be using those for references though, perhaps. So I'm going to now start to clean up one side so that there isn't a lot of redundancy. So on either side here actually. And I'm going to do that by adding a new layer. I'll use my spot healing brush now. I'm going to get rid of that one and that one. And I don't want this redundancy. So I'm going to start to do the same thing in this area on just one side. Now I'm going to save it and put it on my sphere in Photoshop because then I can go back and forth and edit as I preview the changes. Jumping back into Maya, I'll go to my material attribute. I'll right click and choose material attributes. I'll break the connection of the checkerboard and I'll click on my checkerboard pattern and I'll go to file and I'll go out and get that file. Now I'm going to rotate the file to see how the seams are here. So I'll deselect. Now I can see a seam right in here. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop and I can edit that and then I'll just update. Back in Photoshop, I'm going to adjust the issue on the right hand side of my file. I'll put a new layer in and I'll get my spot healing brush again and I'll go ahead and brush up in this area. And now I'm going to get my marquee tool. I'm going to make a selection area here. Command Shift C or Edit Copy Merged and then Command V, Edit Paste. I'll flip it over horizontal and I'll put that over on the other side. I'll put a layer mask on it, get my brush. I'll hold my Shift key. I'll edit that out. I'll hit Command S to save. Go to the texture, click on the color tab and hit reload. And you can see now that that has been resolved. So now I can go in essentially and I can customize this even more. If I were to return Photoshop now, I could put a new layer in. Now I'll get the healing brush. And with the healing brush, I can make copies of existing elements. So I will go down and I'll make a selection of the crater, holding down the Option key and clicking on it. You'll see now that inside that new selection is the crater. I could go ahead and start to drop more of these if I wanted to. I'll change the scale. I would save it, go into Maya, select my texture, reload it. And now if we were to take a look at what the results were, you'll see now these other craters are starting to appear. Now you can see it's a little bit more egg-shaped and perfectly round the way I want. So I'm going to select it. I'll go to my UV editor and I'll right-click and choose UV shell. I'll move it aside so I can see my viewport. I'll hit R for scale, and I'll play with the vertical scale here. So you can see now I've got it proportional. And I could keep going on with this. Now, before I go any further, I'm simply going to put it on and use it as my bump map, so it has a bit of a texture that's kind of real gritty. I'll go to my texture node. In my texture node, I'll scroll down to where it says geometry. Opening up geometry, I'll go to bump map, click on the checkerboards, and I'll apply that same texture to my sphere. And I have something like that. Now I can also adjust the amount of that bump I want to see by clicking on this little box right here to the right of the word file. And in here you'll see bump depth. And if you drag to the right, it becomes more pronounced. If you drag to the left, you'll see minus numbers, and it just reverses out so that the whites are pushing back and recessing, and the blacks are pushing forward. And that pretty much covers what we need to know about putting a seamless texture on a sphere in Maya.